Okay, in the last video, we saw the motivation for the model and the regression that gets us to the market value of the privately held company for the $7 million median range. Here, we're going to go through the model, having done that, and go through each cell one at a time. Okay, so we have the model set for the $7 million median. And remember, for the $7 million median, set for a normalized margin, the regression predicted a 0.505 price to revenue ratio for that company at the 8.7% margin. Okay, the next step is we adjust for current market conditions. And here, what we're doing is, since we've gone back 15 years to get the sample size of 408 roughly privately held companies transacted at that size level, we are adjusting here for current market conditions as compared to the average market conditions over the prior 15 years. And there, what we're doing is using a change in the equity risk premium, implied equity risk premium that is, as calculated by Dr. DeMatteran, and based on that analysis, which will be a separate video, the price is predicted to be roughly 3.5% lower than what was calculated, than what the average was over the 15-year history. Therefore, the current price to revenue ratio is predicted to be 48.7% of revenue. That yields a price of $3.4 million roughly. Once again, an operating margin of 3.7%. We're assuming a G of 3.5%. And once again, that'll be subject of another video. So therefore, our operating profit is $609,000, which is 8.7% of $7 million. But the transaction date is ahead of the income statement date by roughly 213 days. So we gross up profit to the transaction date for 213 days at that G to get 643,000. I'm sorry, trailing 12 months, sorry, 621,000. So using the same 3.5%, we have operating profit of 643,000 for 1 year hence of the transaction date. Just once again, all these numbers are basically using the actual lag days as determined by the transaction data given to us using the 3.5% annual rate of growth. So with 643,000 of profit in the 1 year forward, we need to convert that to free cash flow. And if free cash flow is, of course, less than profit because you're growing and it's consuming working capital and fixed assets and other book items, we determined from the sample that book capital was 27% of revenue, and therefore if revenue is growing at 3.5%, the annual growth of book capital is roughly 65,000. So 65,000 from the 643,000 yields your true free cash flow to the firm of 578,000. Once again, we know the purchase price is 48.7% of 7 million from the regression and the adjustment of minus 3.4%. Therefore, the ratio of free cash flow in the dividend discount model, the Gordon model, divided by the price paid is 16.96%. So therefore, that's the ratio. Then we have to add G to the Gordon model. G is 3.5%. Adding that, you get 20.46% for a pre-tax nominal cost of capital for the average risk firm in the sample size. Converting that to an after-tax equivalent for 35% equals a 14.52% after-tax cost of capital. So now you can see how this is generated. We plug in the 7 million, hit submit, and the 14.52% and the 20.46% that we went over is there. The 5.5, we didn't go through that. The implied operating income is not 5.8. Remember, that was the lag number. When you gross it up to the transaction date on a trailing 12 months, it goes down to 5.5. So plugging the same 7 million assumption into the model yields those results: 5.5, 14.5, 20.46. See that? 20.46. And that is how it works.